What's up, everybody? WrestleMania Saturday. My name's Andy Carr, and this is Hits and Heroes, and this is the Hits blog. I'm going to do some little entries on here just about random topics in the hobby, and just to share my thoughts, just to vent, just to blow off a little steam, just to share some insight into what I'm seeing, and also to get your feedback. And what I want to ask today, and what I would love to get your opinion on here on the socials or wherever you're seeing this, is this question I see posed a lot, and I hear it from vendors, I hear it from collectors, I hear it from shop owners. Are we in the junk wax era 2.0? Okay, what do I mean by that? I mean, are we headed for a situation like the 80s and early 90s where the print runs are too high, and it dilutes value, and at the end of all this, we're all going, this stuff isn't worth anything anymore. Everybody's got it. They printed too much of it, and we had no idea. If you collected during the 80s and early 90s, you know exactly what I'm talking about when you look back today. But there's some interesting things about this, and I want to get your opinions, but I also just want to kind of share my take. I have a take on this that I haven't heard. It's a little different. And I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth a little bit, because my opinion is that both things are happening. What do I mean by both things? I mean, yeah, there's a junk wax era happening right in front of us. But also, at the same time that's happening, there's a completely new era of collectability and value right in front of us that is investable, that is fun, can be lucrative if you want it to be. And can hold value. It can be a smart place to put your money, short-term or long-term, and you can have a lot of fun. So, getting into some details on this, and by the way, junk wax, we're still opening junk wax. There are still, I think about Grand Slam Collectibles in Tennessee. I love following their socials. I hope to visit their shop someday, but I know they've got a wall of wax in the corner that's just junk wax, and I see the owner on socials going out and procuring this stuff. He's still hunting for cases of 80s and 90s baseball, and it's a big hit in his shop. And frankly, I think if I went in there, I'd buy some, because just the nostalgia factor of going back and opening those cards and feeling like a kid again is an experience that you see the opportunity from time to time, but you would just have a huge selection there. So that's junk wax. We learned that when people talk about that, I think everybody's on the same page, especially from like 85, 86 into the early 90s, just really, really high print volumes to the point that we're still uncovering unopened cases of this stuff today. And the question is, are we headed for that again? And I want to cite an example. This week Topps Chrome Football was released, and I saw all this frenzy happening online, people complaining about the price of hobby boxes and how shop owners were sticking it to everybody and stuff. And I don't pretend to understand that world. I know business is supply and demand. The same thing happens in the automotive industry. But I know that I walked into Dick's Sporting Goods last night with my daughter, and they had a wall of blaster boxes for $30. At one Dick's Sporting Goods in Illinois, they had a giant wall of blaster boxes of this stuff. Seems true with wrestling. I do mostly wrestling, and I spotted this year with the Chrome release a lot more blasters and megas just at Target and at some of the retailers and things like that. So here's my 2 cents. Of course, if you like to rip wax like I do, I have tried to be responsible. I know it's smarter to buy singles, generally speaking, that if you're going to spend $300 on a hobby box, it's smarter to find some cards you want in that set and go seek them out with your $300. You'll do much better and get, most of the time. I mean, there's a gambling aspect to this, but I do really well with ripping. I have really good luck on the wrestling side with ripping. and I figured out ways to make use of more of my cards in my show display and things like that, to bring value to people. So I enjoy ripping, and you know, it's something I enjoy doing with my girls. They like wrestling enough that they're interested. Sometimes the wife opens a pack and gets an autograph, and it's a fun moment. And it's just something we can do together that my little one in particular really enjoys it. So I enjoy it as well, and I'm not always the most disciplined from an investment standpoint, how I move in the hobby. Some of it is fun, some of it is gambling a little bit. But I think my answer to this question, and I'd love to get your opinions. Please comment below with your opinions. Are we in a junk wax era? I think the answer is yes, we are, and there's also something else happening in the hobby. So of course, if you rip these packs, you know, a byproduct of that is you're going to have a ton of base cards. And those base cards, I think, are the equivalent, even though they're a much nicer product. And I don't think we're going to go back to nickel and 10-cent commons. But, you know, these cards are, you know, people are not going to be paying $10 for most of these cards on the base card side. And we know that we can look up the print runs and see that there's hundreds of thousands of copies sometimes of these base cards. So you know that. But what's also happening in a hobby box, you get numbered cards, parallels, refractors, inserts, short prints, case hits, relic cards, autographs. And that to me is where the investment should be. That to me is what you should be chasing by any means necessary. And my advice, my personal advice, been back in this now for a few years, study the habits of other collectors. My advice is stay away from blaster boxes. You know, do you get more volume of card, and do you get the experience of ripping more packs? Yes. But you're going to wind up with boxes of base cards and very little of value to show for it. My advice, if you have a budget in the hobby, let's say your budget is $100 a month. Maybe that's high for you, maybe it's low, I don't know. I think it's a nice medium if you're in the hobby. I would rather save that $100 for three months and buy a nice hobby box. And I think that's a realistic number. You know, $300, you can access many nice hobby boxes at that price point. I would rather do that than buy 3 blaster boxes in a month. If you're in the hobby and you're collecting, you know, do people once in a while pull a nice hit out of a blaster? Yeah. Do they get an autograph? Yeah. I mean, I think what's reserved for those boxes is the lower end of the spectrum. Once in a while they stick something in there just to prove everybody wrong, and you see video and pictures of it on social. The ratios in blaster, I assure you, are much worse. They get a little better with Mega. But the hobby boxes are still kind of the meat and potatoes. You're going to get a couple autographs. You're going to get some numbered cards. And at least, even if you don't break even, you'll be left with a handful of cards that have value. And I think that's important. Because I think you have your base cards, and then you have all these other things that are collectible and are going to sustain value long term. If they're iconic, if they're scarce, and if they're attractive, if they look good, that, you know, they're going to maintain value in a long-term card market. I think the sports and non-sports card hobby is here to stay. I think it's only going to grow. I think Topps is going to add new intellectual property that's interesting, like they've done with Disney and SpongeBob, and some of the Marvel stuff. Really, really cool stuff. And it's just going to grow and bring new people in. That's my observation from shows. But I would stay away from blaster boxes and spending too much money just to get a lot of packs. Take that budget, even if it's $100, go buy one nice slab or one autograph card of that player that you're after, and you're going to have something much more valuable in the long run than a pile of base cards. Is it as much fun? I don't know. I think it gets to a point that it is when you've got a nice collection, and it's not a high volume of cards, but it's really nice cards. I say that I like to do both, but you know, that's just my 2 cents on where to invest. I do believe that both things are true. I think there is a junk wax era happening, and I think there's something entirely different that's happening that's very good for collectors and hobbyists, and that's where you want to kind of live. You want to have things in that ecosystem. So I hope you enjoyed this today. Chime in with your thoughts. Thanks for checking this out, and we'll see you on the next one. Hits and Heroes over and out.